Talk like good and loud and plain. Kind of like you did over at church that day. You hear?
Well, I guess this is telling about the experience of one old boy back 50 some odd years ago. We in Red Shirt, we got a little disappointed with life, and we quit high school and got us a job at Alcoa. Well, after working at Alcoa for a few months, we decided we didn't like that either. You know how an 18-year-old boy would be. So we went to Knoxville and joined the Marines. But we had to go down to Nashville to get sworn in. So we told Mom and Dad goodbye and headed out to Nashville. And not long after that, we were on a long troop train headed out for South Carolina to a place called Pearl, what was it?
Paris Island? Paris Island,
because the Japs had already declared war on us over about a year ago. And this place that we're headed is Paris Island. It's boot camp. And we got on a train and got down in one of them swamps down in South Carolina. And this train turned around and began to back way down inside this swamp. Finally, we come to a place where they unloaded us, and an old sergeant, meanest looking fellow I ever seen, come out and told us how mean he was and said he eat nails for breakfast. And he said, some of you people have chewing gum in your mouth. He said, get rid of it. He said, don't swallow it. Don't spit it on the deck. Don't hide it in your clothing. Get rid of it. What he meant for us to do, I'm not sure, but best I remember, I swallowed mine. And we went and was assigned to a barracks with PFC Lund and Sergeant Caruso was our sergeant. And when I left home, my daddy told me, he said, you're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And boy, he was right. We'd get up at 4:30 in the morning. Old PFC Lund would come in and he'd say, hit the deck. He said, just rip that clothing, that cover off of you. Get up and said, if you tear it, said, we'll get you another blanket. He said, I want to see you tear out of there and get out. And all of us had a certain job to do. Part of us would clean the commodes. Part of us would do the lavatories and different things in the morning before breakfast. Then they'd line us up, take us over, and feed us breakfast that I wasn't too crazy about. And then he'd would get us out and march us on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 11, and this would go on for the next 2 months. And we had rifle practice. I made sharpshooter on the old 03 rifle, which wasn't too bad. And then me and Red had our difficulties. The sergeant got me out one time. He said he's gonna stick a whirligig up my ass end and send me back to Tennessee. I remember Red one time was act like he was about to go to sleep during one of our meetings. And they lined old Red up, and another fellow was sleepy, and he'd say, Red would say, no, I'm not sleepy, are you? This other guy would say, no, I'm not sleepy, are you? And this went on for several hours. And after boot camp, what their policy down there was to take a greenhorn full like myself and tear him down to the ground and then build him back up into a U.S. Marine. So after we got out of boot camp and headed for North Carolina, it was, fortunately, I got about a week's vacation. I got to come home. And when I got back to North Carolina, they loaded us aboard a train and headed out for California. And that was the slowest train I ever seen in my life. We'd jump off of it sometimes and run into some of the stores and buy something that appealed to us. But finally we did get to San Diego, and best I remember, I seen Robert Taylor. He was a sergeant, and he was out marching boys around the parade ground. And before you know it, we was aboard ship, headed out for a place called Pago, American Samoa. Stayed there overnight, then we headed out for British Samoa. And they unloaded us over there up in the night. And the mosquitoes actually like to eat us up. Some of the boys still had their overcoats, and they'd get in on their overcoat and trying to hide from those mosquitoes, but it wasn't no way. But the next day, we were very fortunate, and they give us a mosquito net to go over a cot. And we had 2 months of jungle training. They had marched us through the jungle, give us a canteen of water, and they tell you that canteen of water was going to last you all day. And I could have drunk one the first break. But anyway, we had different types where we'd have to, you'd tear your rifle apart, and we got the M1 rifle, the Grand M1, and you had to learn how to take it apart at night while it was dark and put it back together. And then after British Samoa and 2 months training, we headed out for another place called New Caledonia. And we spent about 4 weeks to a month there at New Caledonia. And we seen one place where the Navy boys was lined up for, I thought, well, surely they must be lined up to get something to eat. But come to find out, it was a house of prostitutes. And I never did get in line with them because I wasn't interested. But anyway, we headed out from there down to Australia, Melbourne, Australia, which we spent all night at Melbourne. Then we headed out the next morning to New Zealand, and Wellington, New Zealand, and our camp was about 60 miles from Wellington, and it was a place called Whakakariki. Most of us called it Whakak for short, and we slept in tents there. And it was cold. You had to keep a little fire going in your tent to keep from freezing. And they began to train me and another boy on a 37 millimeter and a tank gun. And we would go to the firing range and fire this and a tank. 37 millimeter, and we would fire 3 different kinds of shells. One was an explosive shell, and another was armor piercing, and another was a big shotgun shell, and it shot pellets. That was the thing that we learned later on to use. And after nearly 2 months training there in New Zealand, we went down to Wellington and boarded a ship. And it wasn't a LST, it was just a troop ship. And we headed out for a place that we found out later on was Tarora. It was in the Gilbert Islands, and it was a little island called Batio, and they give it a code name, Helen, an island called Helen. Well, it proved out to be hell too, because it was fortified by the Japs, and they had about 5,000 Japanese on a little small island. This little small island was called Batio, and it had what do you call them? Anyway, it was fortified with bunkers all the way around, and it had coconut lounge walls all the way. It was about 4 foot high to keep a tank from going over. Well, we started in about, believe it or not, it was 8 miles on this troop ship, and we went over the side to the LCVP, the Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel. And in that we had a Japanese, we had a Jeep and the 37mm gun. And as we'd head out towards Tarara, every time that ship, that little thing, the ship would go up, it'd throw about a 5-gallon bucket of water in your face. And all of us were just soaking wet. And in the distance we could see the Navy pouring their big guns shooting into Tarara, and it was a stream of smoke. And I never will forget the first Japanese bullet that ever come our way. We was all up on the side watching as we go in, but this bullet came by, and after that we hit the bottom of that ship, that LCVP, and one of the Navy boys who was riding and had got us within a few hundred yards offshore, began to hit bottom. And we found out that it was low tide, and he ran up on some coral reef and hung up there for seemed like 30 minutes or so. And the Japs just actually fired. You wouldn't believe how they hit our boat with small arms. And there was one or two big 40mm and a tank boats and a boat that come within just a few feet. If it had hit us, boy, it would have done us all in. But one of these Navy boys got hit with small arms, and you could see the bone sticking out of one of his legs where he got hit. And finally we did get off this coral reef and went around behind a destroyer that was laying out there, and they throwed a stretcher, they throwed a stretcher off, and we tied this boy on, and they
Take a break.
got him.
I don't know. Maybe
They took him aboard to give him some medical attention. Then we headed back in, trying to get in close enough to unload a Jeep and the anti-tank gun. But we couldn't do it. You get fairly close, you begin to hit bottom. But there was a pier built out about 500 yards, and that was going to be our only hope to get in. But every time we'd start in, the patrol boat would come up and he'd say, "What have you got?" We said, "We got an anti-tank gun and a Jeep." He said, "No," said, "we need ammunition. We need food. We need this." And he wouldn't let us in. So we tried all day to get in and couldn't get in. And stayed out there all night and watched the tracers fly from one end of that island to the other. So about 11 o'clock the next day, we went in and he finally waved us on in to And the Jeep hooked onto this anti-tank gun, and he went on in, and we got down and had to wade about waist deep water to get in. And we got in, and there was a tank there by the name of Colorado, and one of the tracks had been knocked off of it. And we got between it and this coconut log and dug us foxhole. And it was just hell on earth. It seemed like every way you look, you'd see dead Marines, and kind of find out it was about 1,026 Marines died during a 72-hour period. Well, we went on and dug in and just shooting in different directions. And this destroyer out there was firing right over the top of our heads. It's firing 5-inch shells. And as they'd come in, the sand on that shore would actually raise up as from a muzzle blast. And I'm getting hoarse.
You want to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, take two.
This big bunker was sticking out of the ground 8 or 10 foot. And this one that this Jap it's almost impossible to get to him. But there was a tank come in with a dozer blade on the front of it. And he kept pushing sand up and back, plumb out to the water, come in there with sand again. And finally got it to where a boy with a flamethrower followed him up there, and he get to where he could stick that flamethrower down inside this big bunker. And we found out later on that he just burnt them Japs. The back of the bunker had an opening that you could drive a vehicle in or out. And there was several hundred Japanese soldiers that just burned to a crisp that were trying to get out of the way of that flame. I've told this before that had it not have been for those flamethrowers, we'd still be fighting on that island. And
About driving a Jeep in on the pier.
Was that on Tarawa?
do what?
Was that Tarawa where they was driving a Jeep? One guy
Yeah.
driving.
But this went on for 72 hours before finally the island was secured. And we went back in a boarded ship and headed out for the Hawaiian Islands. And we was in a little place called Hilo, Hawaii. And they had a Camp Tarara after that battle that we just left. And we spent for the next 6 months on the Hawaiian Islands, training, getting ready for a place that we found out later was Saipan. Well, we boarded LSTs this time, and we were asleep in folding cots up under an LCT, which was sitting up on top of 55-gallon drums. And one morning about 3:30, 4 o'clock, these Navy boys woke us up and said, get below ship because this LCT is about to come off here. And it did. Just a few minutes later, it sounded like the ship broke in two. And we'd look out a door, and these Navy boys was out there trying to lasso those 55-gallon drums, which would come from one side of the ship back to the other. And all of our equipment, rifles, combat packs, everything went with this LCT as it come off. Well, we headed back to a place called Pearl Harbor. And we went in there for the sole purpose of getting new rifles, new combat packs. Everything had to be reissued because it went with the LCT. We found out later on that the first one of these LCTs that went off, there was 45 Marines went with it, and several of them were perished and died. And we finally got reissued all of our combat materials and headed out again for Saipan. And we were in the second wave going in on Saipan. And you could look out between you and shore, you could see explosives. And we wondered whether we'd ever be able to get through those artillery shells. But we did. And we got around a place called Lake Sasupe and dug in, and long about 5 o'clock, it's almost beginning to get dark, there was a runner come from the other side of Lake Sasupe and told us, he said, you people are out in front of the front line. He said, follow me, and said, I'll show you how to get across it. And we headed back across that lake. We took everything, disarmed our 37mm gun and left it sitting there. And we followed this boy across to the front line. And the Japs began to fire artillery shells from the top of that mountain. One would go overhead and hit back on the beach. Another would get a little closer, and the third one would hit right in on top of it. Well, when another boy got to digging, we had lost our entrenching tool, and I'd take my helmet and dig a hole. We finally, and he said, I'll dig while you listen. And I listened to that third artillery shell, which I knew was hitting right in on top of us. And it wasn't several of us. One boy got killed. One boy by the name of Rich died in that artillery shells. And the Navy would open up with their guns, and you could see it on the top of this mountain. And when the Navy would open up, the Japs have quit firing. Apparently, we found out later on they'd run out on something like a railroad track, and they could run them back in a cave. And the next day we headed out on a place called Mount Tapachow, and trying to get to the top of that thing. Oh no, we got lost. Several of our boys got killed. We went as far as we could go in one place, and Lieutenant Cardiff, which was our lieutenant, asked me and another boy to unload a truck that had backed him. And I started around to unload this truck, and the artillery shells started hitting all around us. And this one boy by the name of Wood, WWII, apparently was hit right in front of him and killed him instantly. And when it slowed up, Lieutenant Cardiff got up and went to look over the cliff, and he got hit in the pit of his stomach, just right in the ear. And he died sometime during the night. Well, we started back around to get on the front line. We had to go back a ways and go down the mountain and begin to climb up again. That was when me and another boy, two boys, went up into this little thicket looking for anything as souvenirs, we thought. And I seen a group of men coming out of the wilderness, and I got within just a few feet of them, and I realized they were Japs. Well, we slipped upon them. They had their rifles on their shoulders, and I began to shoot. I shot 3 or 4 shells right in on them. And the 3rd or 4th shell turned sideways. Well, I headed out running across the field, and I finally got my rifle to fire again. And I was running at high speed, shooting back on my shoulder. And what made it so bad was my platoon was there, and they seen me running down through there, shooting like that. They told me later on that a Marine wasn't supposed to retreat. Wasn't no such word. I told them I didn't retreat. I said, I just haul ass and run. But 3 or 4 of us went back up there a little later, and there was one dead Jap, which I apparently had got. And if we'd known in time, we might have killed several of them. But we went on.
He didn't tell about the. He didn't tell about what he was talking about him. You didn't tell about him.
Huh?
About what that guy said about you running.
Tail gunner, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've messed him up then.
I know you.
What that Yankee said about you running down through there. Well, just forget it.
Yeah. Cut it off.
Okay.
After running at this distance, shooting back on my shoulder, So I told the boys, I said, that's what you call giving yourself rear support. And but anyway, we went on up and got on the front line. At night, we were set up somewhere on the front line. I was in a 3rd platoon, and we'd all deal with a 3rd battalion. And if we couldn't get to the front line at night, we'd set that thing up and shooting canister. The canister shells was like a big shotgun shell. And he'd just, when he'd go out, he'd clear everything out for a pretty good ways. Well, we went on and several of our officers had died. Lieutenant Carter, Lieutenant Brown, about all our officers were dead except Major Chamberlain. He was, and we got another officer with the name of Wagner. Well, we went on and fought day and night till Saipan was secured. And we went to, had a place there called Tinian next door. And we started out aboard ship, headed out for Tinian. And we went over into the LCVPs, Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel. And it had a big ramp on the front of it. Well, me and Bowman and a boy by the name of Sakaris was out on top of this ramp as we headed in to Tinian. And the Navy boy had failed to latch it, and it fell and threw the 3 of us into the ocean. My hip right here was just, well, it broke Sakaris' arm as we hit. And of course, again, we lost all of our equipment. Had to get rid of it to keep from drowning. And this Navy boy took us back around the ship, and we went aboard this ship again to get new equipment. I never will forget they had blueberry pie and ice cream. And man, we had a time eating it. Well, anyway, we got new equipment, new rifle, new combat packs and everything. And outside of that big blue spot on my side, I didn't get hurt too bad. And we went back aboard ship and went back ashore and joined our boys as we was marching up on Tinian. And we worked in one place called Hell's Half Acre. We went as far as we could go without going any further because it was so thick. And I never will forget, we were dug in, had sandbags up front, and I'll never forget Sergeant Morgan hollered and said, he said, Treg, get your, and he cussed when he said it, get your GD head down. And at that time, Treg got his helmet just blowed off, and the whole top of his head, he went over on the gun turret like that, and his brains actually, just, I've never seen a man's brains before, Trey got killed instantly. And I believe he's about the only one that we lost on TN to where we had went back to Saipan to a place where they had a rest camp. And we could see the B-29s coming in and going out, coming right over our camp. And our next place to go was Okinawa. We headed out for Okinawa on board ship, and we went up to the south end of the island to make a fake landing. We didn't know at the time. We went over the end of their boats and headed right out just like we were going ashore. And this was on an Easter Sunday morning, April 1st. And the boys down on the north end of the island had such good luck that they said they didn't need us, and we went back aboard ship and headed out to sea. And we were just, I'm in one place we went to, we could see the whales. And while we were out there, President Roosevelt died. And they decided they did not need us, and we headed back to Saipan. And on Saipan for just a couple of weeks, they decided they would let part of us go back to Okinawa. And it was the 8th Marines, which I was a part of. We headed out to Okinawa. And meantime out there, we took another little island called Ayashima. But it kind of found out there wasn't no Japs on that island. And then we went back ashore at Naha on Okinawa. And while there, General Buckner, who was a two-star general who was in charge, got killed. He was talking with our colonel, Colonel Wallace, and he got killed. And after after Okinawa was secured, we went back to Saipan again. And while on Saipan, they dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they told the 8th Marine Regiment, which I was a part of, to head out for Japan. And they signed the peace treaty, and we went into Nagasaki, could see where the big bomb hit, and went around about 60 miles from a place called Nagasaki Bay. And we spent the next couple of months just securing the island. And I could tell you a lot of things that I probably shouldn't. I'd never been with a woman before.
No, don't tell nothing like that.
And,
Dad,
Why not?
the kids are all gonna.
Don't tell them.
Well, what about?
And anyway, after being in Japan for a couple of months, we took one of them low, slow ships, took the northern route back to California. From California we went over to, where did we get? We got
On San Diego, would it? San Diego? On San Diego?
in the northern part of California.
I forgot. You want to cut it off a second?
Huh.
You want to cut it off a second? He doesn't forget where he's at.
Oh.
Wait a minute, let's see.
Huh.
You ready for something? He's trying to figure out where he landed, California. Like, what was you wanting to tell?
So, I've tried to relate about 3 years' experiences
Wait a minute, is it on?
in 30 short pages, and I left out so many things, and I was told this, that if God would forgive me for being foolish as to quit school and join the Marines, I would never, never, never do anything like that again.
He got married.
What?
He got married.
Huh?
You got married.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about the plane that was coming in that we was shooting at that was our...
What?
We was shooting at our own plane? Remember that story? Flashing his lights and stuff.
I don't know who. Cut it off just a minute. So,
This Betty plane come in, and everybody and his brother was shooting at it. It went on in and drifted on back out to sea, and they never knock it down.
What about the guy driving the Jeep in on the pier?
And what?
The two guys driving the Jeep on the pier.
Oh yeah.
well, what was that at? Where was it at?
We were down in Florida, and we run on Sadowski. And nobody wanted to drive that Jeep in because of, it was several hundred dead Marines, believe it or not, were laying on that pier out there. Some of them was laid like, I remember I seen one of them they take a dead Marine and just put him up on, so they were using it same as you would for sandbags. And Sadowski told us, he said, if Nipper would drive that Jeep, he said, I'll lay up on the top and tell him which way to go. And he said they headed out in, and he said, I don't know how I kept from getting hit. He said they just shot the dickens out of that Jeep as it went in. But said I never did get hit. I was laying up there telling Nipper,
Nipper
go
had
to
his
the
head.
right, go to the left. And, I mean, he told me and Mama that. But we got in there, we got down and waded about waist deep to get in. And they took the Jeep and the 37mm gun in. And
I'm not taking anything else.
Is that when you was trying to get to the front of the line?
what?
The front of the line? You say they shot from the back of the line toward the front?
He's not understanding. spending some
Yeah.
on it. You think that's enough? Do that again. Okay.
The honey dippers would go the back of these toilets, and they'd fill up 2 buckets. One, they'd have a thing here with a bucket on each end, and they'd carry that stuff out and put it on their gardens.
Can you imagine?
And
How much germs?
that was, well, this same guy that was drove the Jeep in told me and Mama about, he went AWL, away without leave, and he got down in where he was about knee deep in that stuff, and he didn't realize what he was, what he got into.
He almost was about to catch him, I think, and he jumped over a wall and jumped right into it. Well,
Anything else you can think of? Anything else you can think of?
I can't think of it. I should have read it too, so I don't.
What about the shrapnel falling?
What?
When you tell me about shrapnel falling out of them guns, and they told you
Oh,
to dig
yeah.
a foxhole?
Well, these, they was far,
What?
had all these flares, these, which would light up at night.
Yeah.
And they was in a 5-inch shell. And they'd try to make it come out overhead where you could see out. And when it would blow up, the flare would come down on a parachute, and that shell would hit somewhere right in on the line. Go zoo, 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 zoo. They scare the dickens out of you. And
Well,
You mean it fall on you? Did it fall on y'all?
And on 10N, the Army had moved in on Saipan, and they was formed from Saipan all the way over to 10N. And they'd fire them things, it'd sound like about 4 or 5 freight trains coming. And they'd come right up the line and just hit right out front. And they were 155 millimeter guns. And just scare the dickens out of you.
yeah.
But
We made some anti-aircraft guns. The Army set up for you.
yeah,
Told you to dig a foxhole. You didn't want to dig it. That one. I'll look it up. Oh, he told me so many over the years.
Yeah,
I don't know if I get them right or not.
yeah. Well, that ought to do it.
That do it.
You think that's enough? Think of anything else needed? Not much time's left. Now what do? Can you put that on
Yeah.
something right now and show it, or?
Remember you telling me before about it?
Yeah.
Mr. Wellington, New Zealand, me and the other boys went to a place called the Royal Oak. And we started off just drinking a beer or two downstairs. But you went upstairs, you get
Whiskey?
What's the name of that? Is a drink. And men, they said that I got drunk, and I started off seeing how many cigarettes I could light at one time.
That doesn't matter.
I said I light about 8 or 10 cigarettes, and then I got on and I'd roll down the steps.
The big wide steps, and then he just rolled.
And finally, we started back to board ship, and it was, the Greenway plant was made for one man, and both them were carrying me. They finally got to the top, and the officer of the day said, just take that man down to the brig. They said, no way. What so happened to Lieutenant Carter, of course, heard it. He said, you heard what they said. He said, take him on down to the brig. And during the night sometime I got to vomiting. And they wanted to make me clean it up. They brought me the water and the buckets. And they said, that boy, no, mop over. They tell them where they're going, and I was mopping them. And the next day, oh, I had a headache. Ooh. That you wouldn't believe it, what a headache I had. But I got over it finally. And Lieutenant Carter come down there and got me.
You make liquor out of raisins?
And what?
Did you make liquor out of raisins?
Raisin Jack.
Raisin Jack?
Yeah.
You don't tell that? Hey.
You don't want me to tell about the
Whorehouse. No.
Is it in here about what?
I don't know. I hadn't read that in a long time.
No. You don't need to tell that.
Well, it's still taping, so I don't know how much tape's left on it. Let's see.